Ollie, welcome back to the latest edition of Terrace Talk. Disappointment in South Wales for Norwich City last Saturday. The chance to bounce back this upcoming Saturday at home to Watford, a team that Norwich notoriously struggle a little bit against. Of course, did get the victory the last time these two sides faced out at Carrow Road in February time. Delighted to be joined, of course, by Pete from the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast. Looking forward to this game. Pete, first and foremost, how are you this evening? You know, a positive start to the campaign for your team.
Yeah, no, it's been kind of positive. I mean, we don't really know how to process these emotions. We've been so negative for about 3 years, but no, it's nice. We've got I'd say bordering on club legend in charge, and he's doing really good things, encouraging stuff. A few things thrown in, but hey, that's the Championship, isn't it?
It is indeed. Of course, we spoke sort of back in February time when these two sides met at Carrow. As I mentioned, a lot's changed since then. I mean, typical Watford fashion, you've got a different manager in the dugout, as you've just mentioned. Of course, at that point, it was Ismail. Now it's Tom Cleverley. I think Ismail was removed a month later. Cleverley appointed initially on temporary charge, then made permanent. Mid-table, 15th place finish last season in the Championship. How was kind of that last few months of that season? I'd imagine quite difficult.
Once Tom came in, the season was fine. Basically, our season ran okay to good, and then we got to Boxing Day, and we lost 4-1 to Bristol City, and the bottom fell out of our world. We couldn't buy a win, and we went about 13, 14 games, something like that. We won like one win, and it was like, and the club were trying to go, look, we're really desperately trying not to fire someone. You know, we'd had we'd been involved with a Q&A with the owner, first time he'd spoken to us in 11 years. So we finally got and said, you know, look, it's one of the things we want to do. And we know he's, notoriously trigger happy, but they were desperately trying not to do it again. And to be honest, I think they held on about 4 or 5 weeks too long, in all honesty. And Tom came in with 9 games left to go. And we whilst we were in mid-table, because we hadn't seen a win in so long, we were really worried that we were going to be really suckered into it. As it was, we only ended up 6 points above the bottom 3. So it was like, but Tom came in. We got a 1-0 win away at Birmingham City, who, of course, ended up going down. The importance of that game cannot be overstated. It wasn't pretty. He just made us a lot harder to beat. Again, we got lots of draws after that, but he then got another win. But we had a not necessarily great preseason, but since the season started, he's really he's done great things, which is lovely to see, as lovely as it is unexpected.
Yeah, of course. In terms of the summer, moving into that, how did you kind of feel? I suppose for the upcoming season, was the bar positive? Did you think you're going to have a better season than you did last time out? Or given I know the turbulence around Watford, often transfer windows and finances and various other things, how did that all play out?
Well, yeah, you know what football supporters do during a transfer window when we're not seemingly doing very much. Yes, you'd had the AFCON, yes, you'd had the Euros, but even so, other people were doing things, and we felt like, oh my god, we know we are going to lose a number of players. As it was, Aspria, who obviously you saw one of the better moments from at your place, and people like Kone went. We've had and it was like, well, we've not really strengthened. And even this week, now we've done some deals and we have brought in a number of players. Even there on a message board that I was on, which is by no means an extreme one, are generally kind of well considered. There was still a debate as to whether or not we were stronger than last year or weaker, and the perception is effectively, if you think of your team as a wall, we've gone from breeze blocks to bricks. We haven't got bigger blocks, but the cement, the mortar, is so much better, and that's down to the coaching of Tom Cleverley and his team, and the fact that for the first time in probably 4 to 5 years, I would suggest, the players are entirely behind the manager. And it's an interesting one. I don't know whether you would have it, because of course you've got a very well known owner, but so many times for so many years now, and we've had success with the Potsos. It's been great, but one of the idiosyncrasies are players come out and they talk about their relationship with the owner. because of course sometimes a lot of these have come over from Udinese or Granada when they were part of the network. So yeah, they've got a pre-existing relationship with the owner. They might do, but very few times did they really talk about the manager, other than maybe querying who it was this week. Obviously. But since Tom's come in, all of the player communications, which has improved no end, and comms have referenced the manager. And it really feels like within the team department, there seems to be a really, really strong dynamic. Obviously, it's Watford, so we're only one crazy manoeuvre from falling flat on our face and ruining it all by doing something stupid. But at the moment, we've got a manager who is saying everything right in the communications element, and he talks, and we all went, wow, he sees games like we do. Because you know what it's like. You have a manager, and you go, that was a woeful performance, and he comes out and says, well, it was only a conspiracy the size of the Kennedy assassination that stopped us winning that 8-0. And you all go, what? Hey, who? He doesn't. He comes out, says it, and we all go, that's exactly how it is. And then you try to see some improvement. We did have a loss the other day, and we got a draw with Cov. And the first half against Cov was really, really not good. And we're not starting games particularly well. The last three league games, we have conceded goals in the first 4 minutes 3 times. So, yeah, they need to sort that out. But that notwithstanding, he's getting responses. He's getting, kind of discretionary effort from the players. And I think a lot of people are very happy. For the first time in years, we look like being more than the sum of our parts. And it doesn't matter if the individual players are not necessarily household names at the moment. When we signed Espria, he wasn't a household name. Kone was somebody else brought in to, take the next place of Yao Pedro or somebody else, etc. So it feels like the production line is back and working again, and the football we're watching is worth watching, which it hasn't been for years. So all good.
Yeah,
All good.
yeah, I was sort of going to ask you about performance levels, obviously results on the pitch. I mean, you started the season in a really, fast, rapid way, 3 straight wins, a really impressive win against Stoke, 3-0 in that game. And Derby, I think, sort of have been proven in recent weeks. They're starting to pick up some points, a victory in sort of dramatic fashion at Millwall, which of course is notoriously always a difficult place to go. As you sort of mentioned, results maybe tailed off a little bit in recent weeks. Sheffield United, of course, a strong outfit, a narrow defeat, and then the draw against Coventry recently. Other performance levels been good. Obviously, you mentioned maybe being slow starts, but have you grown into games, and obviously the results, and the points on the board sort of showed it's been a pretty good start.
Yeah, no, the growing into games is really something, whereby if we do start off slow, we play our football and we play our way into the game. Is a very, very good description of it. And we scored a host of goals. We scored 8 goals in the first 3 league games, and interspersed with that we had a 5-0 defeat of MK Dons in the League Cup, and a 2-0 against Plymouth, or Wayne Rooney's Plymouth, as we all know them now. And suddenly we were scoring goals for fun. So we were always going to hit a speed bump. We were always going to hit something. And Sheffield United probably showed how to play us, which is basically be absolutely in our face. And in terms of the stats that they had, if you look through all of the previous games, we outwon. That's not even a word, but you get my point. We won the battle of the tackles. We kind of won that. Sheffield United still didn't beat us. We still did more than them, but they came really up close, and it knocked us out of our rhythm. We started making silly technical errors because if you put somebody under pressure, the quality of what they're going to do starts to suffer, and then sometimes decision making goes the wrong way. And as it was, they got a goal. Yes, in the first 2 minutes, that was an utter comedy of errors. I would word the or cluster, whichever way you want to use it. And it was just one of those things. Thereafter, I think if it was a boxing match, they had it on points, but we were you would still look at that team and go, well, they're still into parachute payments. They've only just come down. They've got the likes of Kiefer Moore, Gustavo Hamer, and the guy. Well, he didn't score because it was an own goal off of Backman's back, ironically. But in O'Hare coming in. They've got the lad, Ablaster in midfield, who for a 20-year-old has no right to be 20. He is superb. He's really going to fly, that kid. So, you're going to have that against them. And Coventry, whilst they hadn't been great, are still Mark Robbins Coventry. They kind of build. I know you got a result up there, but they've notoriously slow starters. and they came to us and made some changes, etc. And yeah, caused us some problems. But it was a game of two halves. We got back in it and won 1-1. If the game had gone either way, nobody could have really complained. But it was everybody came away and said another good championship match. We've had so many games where we've just been stillborn in terms of what we do with the ball and what we do without the ball, and instead what we've got and what's been the miracle is too strong. But as I say, what we've got is a whole host of players who have been on the periphery of the squad. Many not even in the club; they've been out on loan, kind of out of sight, out of mind, and he's been getting a tune out of them to the point that now we have made a lot of signings or a number of signings. They're not in it straight away, but we have hope that they'll come in and strengthen us up that bit more. But yeah, he's getting a lot more out of a whole lot less.
Yeah, unlike Watford, I'm not actually going to be sacking Pete. I'm just bringing in an addition. Justin can join us now. Justin, good to see you. Of course, me and Pete there have been speaking quite positively about Watford's start to the campaign.
I was listening. Yeah.
Well, I
suppose they can have no higher compliment than the fact that Justin has been turned from the dark side, to being almost encouraged. Notoriously grumpy though he is normally this season,
This season, I've been cheering and looking forward to going to football and being positive and all kinds of things. It's just new territory for me. So that's the biggest compliment you can get about Watford this season, is that I am enjoying it. And I haven't been able to say that for at least 2, possibly 4 seasons. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, I was enjoying the football under Tom Cleverley. We've sort of mentioned him a little bit throughout the show. Has the playing style differed at all from those previous? Ismail, of course, I think when he first came in, maybe you at times were relatively positive, but then, as Pete sort of mentioned, difficult games away at Bristol City, etc., where maybe it wasn't working. Have you seen a dramatic shift? What's maybe the formation, the setup that Watford go for these days?
Well, the formation is, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, is a 3-4-2-1. See, I have been listening. Is that correct? There we go.
This is it.
It feels a little bit as if the brakes are off, which we haven't been able to say for the past few seasons. We are conceding very early goals, very early stupid goals. And if we can cut that out and settle into games a bit and not have to worry about sort of catching up on a goal that we conceded, we could be quite a force to reckon with this season. I mean, we did very well in our first few games. Obviously, we beat Millwall 3-2 away. We were 2-0 up, late goal, and we win it. Okay, that's fine. But we, convincing wins against Stoke, good win against Derby again, early goal conceded. So I think, it's going to be a tough task at Norwich. I have to say, this is going to be one of the possibly the second biggest one that we've faced after Sheffield United. Have we done at Norwich? We had quite a good win at Norwich, didn't we? Was that the Emmanuel Dennis? Have you gone through this already?
No.
You've heard this one before.
Just watching your eyes and the grey matter rumbling as to when that was. Last season wasn't, although we had a good goal from Asprilla, which saw him get a move to
outside the box,
Spain.
Yeah. And then there was obviously the one where we won in the season we went up, where you had the champagne on ice, but we beat you. And there's been so it's a bit mixed bag, isn't it, up at Carrow Road? It's going to be interesting.
There is a fantastic photograph of the season when we were both we were both up and then back down again. We came to yours and we were wearing our red kit, which everybody liked. It was all good fun. And Emmanuel Dennis got the goal, and he does an overhead flip. And he's literally as up is down, as down is up. There's a guy behind, kind of to the right of where the away end is, flicking him the V's, and it's gone everywhere in Watford. Whoever he is, he's a legend. He never needs to pay for a beer in Watford again, because he's
that's superb.
Quite right. Everybody's grumpy.
Yeah, I know the picture you're referencing. I've seen that doing the rounds at different points on socials. I mean, when I've spoke to you two guys before, stability is certainly not a word that's been brought up too often. Does it feel like maybe under Tom Cleverley, you sort of mentioned a little bit, Pete, do you think stability is going to be there? He's going to be given time, given the chance to build this team, shape it, try and push you guys forward?
That is the $64,000 question. We reference and always talk about Rob Edwards. because of course he went to Luton and did what they did, and fair play, and he was treated abysmally at Watford, quite frankly. I don't think, personally, I don't think he's any great shakes as a coach. I really don't. But as a human being, nobody should be treated like that. 11 games in, and then you're turfed out when the one thing he wanted was a left wing back, and we went, no, here you go. Have another number 10. That's what you need, isn't it? At that point, and it was ridiculous. The concern has to be that could happen again, because there is internal politics at the club which sees us do things that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it had a different feel to it then, and it has a feel to it now, because there's a feel good factor. He's a young British coach. He needs to do what he needs to do. And our owner is a dyed in the wool Italian. He is used to there being 3 managers a season, and that's the norm. And we will get a manager bounce, but we haven't had manager bounces now for a long time. So his propensity to do the galactically stupid wouldn't surprise us at all. That being said, the club have got behind him seemingly. He is absolutely bringing that stability, and I think probably all bar probably one that I can think of, everybody is absolutely backing him. Talking about that politics, he's been at the club since 2017. He was on loan for a season in 2009, won the Player of the Season award, and then went on to stuff and glory and England captain, league wins, and all of that sort of nonsense. He's been with us since 2017. Nobody knows the inside mechanisms, machinations, politics, and stupidity that goes on at Watford like Tom Cleverley. So he's either incredibly well positioned to be able to avoid the pit traps and work with the people who are very, very pro him more than anybody else. And the general hope is the fact that the owner of the club is also having to look after Udinese, because his dad's in his mid-80s. They had a scare last season, and actually, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to end up getting what you got, which is us in the second tier. It could have been them in the second tier. So there's been an awful lot of focus on Udinese this season, and early to middle of the transfer window, a lot of people weren't happy about that, because they were bringing in lots of players and spending millions and millions, and coming out and making public apologies to the population of Udinese and saying this is not good enough, we'll get there. And we're going, where's our apology? Kind of what's going on there? We've not got that. The general hope is that if Gino Pozzo, our owner, looks at it and goes, you know what, look where we are in the Championship, look what we've done and look where we are, and doesn't get carried away with thinking he should be promoted back and that's it. Whatever happens with Tom Cleverley, stick with him. The guy is doing great work. He won't be with us forever, because I'm sure somebody will come and snuffle him up. Everton normally come sniffing around our bins anytime they can.
He used to play for Everton, didn't he? So there is a link there, of course. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Don't just throw that together, Justin.
Don't just make it up, do you? You'll get good at this.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, before we sort of turn the attention forward to the game, just intrigued to get a little bit more insight on the transfer window at Watford. You mentioned sort of some of the big outgoings, of course, of Spria and Kone going for relatively big money in terms of incomings. A few experienced players from Premier League, Ogbonna, Sissoko returning back to Watford, a few sort of unknowns maybe from overseas. What have you made of that business and sort of the players from what you've seen so far in the flesh?
Who have we seen in the flesh so far? We've seen a little bit of Rocco Vata, who came from Celtic. He's a young lad, 19, 20 years old. He looks like he's going to be a lot of fun. If we can start getting him involved in games, he's sort of a attacking sort of number 10 that isn't afraid to have a shot from a decent distance. So he looks like a lot of fun. Festi Ebicelli, very, very brief appearance. He's had one half a game so far, I think, hasn't he, Peter?
Yep,
was that
yep.
the weekend?
Yes.
I'm trying to think who else we've brought in, to be honest with you. I mean, it's more about actually players that previously were with us that have been brought on and really coming on. So Matty Pollock, who we've had for a couple of seasons, massive shocker down at Millwall a couple of seasons ago. Everybody kind of wrote him off. He's had a few sort of loan spells here, there and everywhere. Come back into the team, looks like possibly one of the best central defenders in the Championship. Honestly, the renaissance of Matty Pollock is just amazing. It's one of those things that you just could not have predicted at the beginning of the season. And it's also about players like Chakfadadze, who we've had for a season, but had sort of sporadic appearances last year, didn't really kick on and have a good sort of tranche of matches one after the other so we could measure him. Had a brilliant Euros for Georgia. He's come into the team looking absolutely immense, although he did get an injury on Saturday, so he may well be out against Norwich. I'm not sure. Back spasm. I don't know if he's going to be back for the Norwich game. I'm trying to think of us. Oh, well, we've got Jebison from Bournemouth on loan, who doesn't quite look ready yet, but then we haven't really seen a lot of him. He's sort of coming on at 60 minutes. He's done that twice so far. So jury's out on Jebison. Yeah, that's
I do think that jury's out is a little bit strong because it feels like there's a judgment, a sword of Damocles over him. This lad hadn't played the whole of last season due to illness. He came on with about 30 minutes to go and he was blowing after 20 minutes because he's not nobody gets to match speed until they've had a number of games. His movement and his initial draft was terrific, absolutely terrific. And all the reports are in training, this kid is the real deal. But to be able to do it in a live fire environment and do it, a little bit more is something else we need to see. Another somebody who has come back to the club who probably does need a mentioning is Musa Sissoko. You talk about people with Premiership experience. We'd had Musa in that unfortunate, kind of head over heels kind of season where we went down, you went down, nobody enjoyed that. And he was well, you can argue if he was the best of a bad bunch or if he was just another one of the bad bunch. He was brought in, he's 35 now, but Tom Cleverley knew him when he was here. He says, no, he's uber professional. He absolutely knows what it was and he brings standards and he's come into the midfield. And because we're in the Championship, not the Premiership, it is a different kind of level. And sometimes you look at somebody jumping in from the Prem to the Championship and looking at it as a culture shock. He's taken to it like a duck to water. And alongside him, he's got Tom Dele-Bashiru, who was again, last season in and out. He's putting in regular performances now, which is great to see. The shape with that 3-4-2-1, a kind of Christmas tree, is the old Terry Venables currency. It also means that what he's done is, we mentioned Rocco Vata, we mentioned Chak Fatadze. We've also got kind of Edo Kayembe playing there. We've got Tom Ince. We've got a whole host of people who can play number 10. Last year under Val, these number 10s were playing in a 3-4-3 and they were as wide as you can go. It was like once you get to the touchline and keep going wider. And so everybody up front was so isolated. Here he's brought them in, he's playing them far more centrally. And bearing in mind when I referenced the owner going, here's another number 10, that's what he wants, because that's where the big money goes. So he brings those in to try to develop, and then we kind of put them into a formation where they don't get to develop. If Gino thinks about it for 5 minutes, which I know he does, I'm sure he does, but if he looked at it and says, well, what he's going to be doing is he's developing players to score goals and to get assists and to develop well in those areas. This really works for my model. Perhaps, just perhaps, leave it alone. Let him carry on. He's doing a great job.
Yeah, of course, we'll see all those players on Saturday. Just intrigued to get your thoughts on Norwich and their season so far. Have you seen much of us, of course, under different management this season? Johannes Hoff-Torup, of course, arriving after David Wagner's dismissal at the end of last season. Pretty horrific ending in the playoff semi-final against Leeds. But I think fresh optimism from our end. But, what have you made of it from afar?
Well, I looked at Torup and went, who brought him in? Because if you look at what he did, he was the assistant manager at Nordland, whatever it was. Yeah, thank you. They got, because of the idiosyncrasies of the Danish league, they've got 12 teams. They play each other twice, and then it splits like the Scottish one does, with the top 6 playing to get up and the bottom 6 playing to stay up. And they were top after 22 games. He came in on the 18th game because the technical director, went up. He then played through the next 10 games and brought them down to second. The next season he finished 4th, and it was like, well, sorry, I'm throwing backhanded compliment here. Norwich are a big and good club, and I was surprised that I didn't feel that this guy was really doing it all. He was a real surprise move for me in terms of that. In terms of what you've done, I think, genuinely going to Coventry and getting a win, it should never be sniffed at all. I like Cov a lot, but getting the result there, that's a different thing altogether. But you've had a couple of other ones which were like, that doesn't seem to be quite moving in the right direction. And the thing that was particularly alarming for me was, I mean, we're a selling club, but I mean, as for who's the lad who's just gone off to Galatasaray?
Gabi Zara.
Yeah, Gabi Zara. I mean, they won 5-0 at the weekend, and I don't speak Turkish, but I tell you one thing, they know his name.
Yep.
They know his name a lot, and you think, wow, have you strengthened? So that'll be interesting to find out on Saturday.
Of course, yeah. Before we sort of maybe speak about score predictions and your thoughts on the game, I mean, these two sides have met quite a bit, I'd say, down the years. We've both sort of yo-yoed between the Championship, the Premier League. Watford have typically had the upper hand, I suppose. Is there any sort of memorable games for good or bad reasons that stick out between us two?
I can give you one. When you came and did us 3-0 in January 2022, what a night that was. That was the night where we really needed to kick on, and that was Ranieri's last match, wasn't it? He was hanging by a thread, and there was the aforementioned Musa Sissoko supposedly writing to the fans to G them on, but at the bottom someone had put insert Musa Sissoko signature here, so it was clearly written by somebody else at the club. We had all these wonderful fireworks going off and everything else. I've got a feeling that's also a night where we had a floodlight failure, so we had something like 40 minutes extra time added on at the end of the game, and we ended up losing that 3-0. So that one sticks out in my mind, definitely. One thing I can tell you is I imagine we might be debuting our black away kit on Saturday, because that's one that hasn't been worn yet, and there will be a clash with the yellow. So I imagine we might see a rather nice black away kit on Saturday.
Yeah, very possibly. Partly the same game is obviously remembered. Also because Josh Sargent, if you remember, scored with what, if Sky would be believed, was the most amazing deliberate scorpion kick you've ever seen. I think it was good reactions. He threw a leg at it and it went in. Fair enough, fine, but let's not all be having wet dreams about that, eh? But in fairness to Josh Sargent, since then he's never failed to be an absolute right raw pain in the backside. So yeah, he's there, and I think the flip side of that would then be last season, where you come to ours, you're 2-0 up, and you are looking really good for it. And I appreciate, you guys were expecting David Wagner to get basically kind of, I don't know, I imagine dropped off the coach somewhere near Thetford. I imagine. I didn't think he was going to make it all the way to Norwich when we win it 3-2. And that felt like that was okay. But as I say earlier on, that was prior to Boxing Day, and after Boxing Day, everything went a little bit crumbly. So never mind.
Yeah, I suppose who's maybe the star man to look out for on Saturday? You've mentioned some of the new players. I think, as you mentioned, Chaka, Ep6 might be out potentially with injury. Seems like he's had a pretty positive start to the season. I think he's a top chance creator in the Championship, and 2 assists, 1 goal. Is it Ryan Andrews, the young lad out wide? I think he's had a relatively positive start. Maybe who's the one to look out for?
I would say look out for Bio, and wonder why he starts up front on his own every game. If you can tell me why you think Bio starts matches, I'd be interested to know your thoughts, because I'm racking my brains and I can't think of an answer.
Because Jefferson's not fit. That's why. That's basically it.
But there must be other options, surely. What about Dumbia or anyone other than Bio? It's just terrible.
Because Doumbia is 18 years old. He got his first senior start for the Mali national team in midweek. He only got back on Friday, so that wasn't gonna happen. But Bio works very hard. But if you showed him basically a cow's arse, a banjo, and a barn door, he wouldn't be able to differentiate between them. He'd throw a dart at it and it would kill somebody in the adjoining room. It's that's his problem. But he's willing and he works hard. And now he's an Udinese player because inexplicably we sold him to Udinese in the transfer window to be loaned back again. The reason we sold him was because he wants to play top flight European football. So he's now back at the Championship doing nothing at all. Go figure. Welcome to Watford, everybody. So yeah,
But
there you
apart from my sarcastic answer, Peter, is anybody that you think should look out for good reasons rather than poor ones?
Chak Fatadze went down, and it was like spinal board and everything, and it was like real. We ended up with 13 minutes of added time on, but then less than an hour after the game, he was walking up and down outside, and the reports are that he had a back spasm. I've had one of those, and I was walking by the end of the evening. And let's face it, I'm not fit to do anything, let alone walk. So I think he may be okay, but it may be precautionary. We've got, the joy of it is that we've got these underutilized players who, as I say, were on the fringes last time. So you can bring in Tom Ince, but he's only really been used at League Cup kind of level, but he scored a hat-trick against MK Don. So, he's Brighton with it. He signed an extended contract on reduced terms to try and stay there. Again, another one who's speaking well of Tom. But this young lad, Rocco Vata, who was in Celtic B side, I think he had about 5 appearances, totaling about 60, 70 minutes for the first team. But yeah, he's a lot of fun. So, the moment Chak Fatadze goes, there'll be somebody else who will bring something different to those 2 number 10 positions. Which will be interesting. The other problem was because, as we mentioned, Chak Fatadze and Edo Kayembe, who is also playing in that other number 10 position at the moment, they both play for Georgia and Congo, DR, I think it was, respectively. So they travelled, they trained, they played, and it could well be that that's just kind of wear and tear, and basically they're a bit knackered. So there could be a bit of a refresh anyway, but we'll see what happens. Prior to the last week of the transfer window, we were expecting a bottom 3 fight, basically. So there we go. And you mentioned Ogbonna earlier on. He was signed literally on the last day and hasn't been anywhere, basically anywhere near close to anything yet. But it was said that he might be available for this week. Well, bearing in mind we've got well done it. There's a seeded draw in the League Cup. Let's go to Manchester City, everybody. That seems fair. He'd probably get a run out there as they, rack up a cricket score. I shouldn't wonder.
Yeah, before you head there, of course, you head to Carrow. With that, intrigued to sort of get your score predictions, your thoughts and feelings on the game. I mean, I think I looked at the records and doesn't make for great reading for Norwich. I think Watford have won 8 of the last 10 games between us. We've won 2. There's not been a draw since 2011. So how do you see this game going? Give us a score prediction.
Is that right? No draw since 2011. Yeah, but these are just stats, aren't they, really? At the end of the day, I'd be happy with a draw, frankly. So I'm going to annoy Peter and go for 1-1, which is a score I'm not allowed to go for on our podcast. I'm going to go for a 1-1.
That's entirely reasonable. I did that last time, and we got a 1-1 draw on the other one. So there we go. Yeah, I don't think very much different. I think taking something and trying to kind of make it 2 games unbeaten after that Sheffield United would be good. If we can get on the front foot and go early, I suspect Watford could win. Simply because we are a team who can smother teams. We are suddenly a team who last season with a richer palette seemed to have no options off the bench. Suddenly we do. Albeit not perfect by any means, but we're Watford. We don't expect, Sergio Aguero to be playing for us. He's always with the other lot. So no. I'll go for a 2-1 away win to the Horns.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, that would be a first, I think, team to win at Carrow since last November. Norwich got a pretty good home record, but I always fear Watford. So, yeah, certainly not overly confident of Saturday, given that we've not had the greatest of starts of the campaign. But we'll see what we get. And, of course, guys, before we leave, just want to plug the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes channel and where people can find your guys' content.
Well, pretty much anywhere, really. We're on everywhere from YouTube to TikTok. We are also on X, previously Twitter, and we have a website, do not scratch your eyes.com or .co.uk, Peter. It's been a while since I've... Is it .com? .com. So yeah, we're there as well. And yeah, if you want to check out any of our podcasts, we're on Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere else. So be lovely to have you coming along and listen. And thank you very much for letting us plug it.
No problem at all. Of course, we'll link all that good stuff down below. Plenty of enjoyable, wacky Watford content over there, which is definitely worth a time if you've got an opportunity. I'll be on, of course, those guys' channel very shortly, so why not hop over and listen to that once you've listened to this. With that, of course, we're going to sign off. Thanks for joining us, of course, guys. Thanks for joining me as well. Really do appreciate your time this evening. Looking forward to the game on Saturday. Norwich, of course, need to try and get another positive result to sort of kick on the momentum again to more positivity after the disappointment in South Wales, but never an easy test against Watford. So, let's hope for 3 points.